Let's just get this out of the way first. You wouldn't last a day. Not because you're soft, though, let's be honest, you are. But because this world is not built for comfort. It's built for continuance, for scraping forward with cracked hands and half a stomach, and calling it success if no one died before dusk. Here, survival doesn't come with a score. It comes with a list of things you didn't lose. Your roof, your daughter, the good ox, and if you're lucky, your teeth. Before we begin, subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Comment where in the world are you listening from, and what time it is for you. Now, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's begin. The day starts before the light. You wake up when the chickens don't, because the chickens, like everything else in this village, answer to the weather, not the clock. You lie on a mat so thin it could be mistaken for a suggestion, your joints stiff from damp straw and last night's dreams of cooked rice. Not rice with flavor, just rice. The fantasy is luxury enough. Your breath fogs in the air and you count your fingers just to check what the cold didn't take while you slept. All there, for now. You dress in layers that have no shape anymore, just brown on top of dirt, on top of faded. Your outer robe is tied with a length of cord that used to belong to something nobler. A curtain, maybe. A sack. Doesn't matter. You step outside and the ground greets you like an old enemy, familiar, unkind, and always waiting. Mud if you're lucky, frost if you're not. Your neighbor coughs in the next hut over. You don't ask if he's sick. Everyone's sick. The real question is who can afford to stop moving. Breakfast is an event in theory. In practice, it's a bowl of boiled millet that tastes like boiled millet and shame. If you're clever, you saved a bit of pickled turnip from last week. If you're generous, you share it with the child still pretending sleep in the corner. If you're realistic, you hide it in your sleeve and chew with your back turned. Hunger here isn't a condition, it's a personality trait. Everyone has it, some are just better at disguising it than others. By mid-morning, you're in the field. Always the field. Whether it's rice, sorghum, barley, or hope, whatever grows from ground that does not love you. The soil is heavy and clings to your feet like it resents your steps. Your back bends automatically, like your spine remembers its place in the social order. You work in rows, in rhythm, side by side with people who've seen your birth, your grief, your failures, but no one talks. Talk wastes breath, and breath is for hauling, not sharing. You look up once to stretch and see smoke from the richer end of the village, the family with the bigger roof and 2 pigs. You don't hate them. Not really. Envy here is a quiet thing. It simmers under the ribs, then folds itself neatly into another row of planting. You'll never have what they have. That's not philosophy. It's geometry. The shape of your life does not include upward angles, but you keep moving, because movement here is the only thing you own. Lunch comes in the form of whatever you managed not to eat last night. Usually a cold starch and a cracked radish. If you're lucky, you eat with your hands. No one has time for ceremony, not even the old ones. They gave that up when the emperor changed. Again, you don't remember which one sits on the dragon throne now. You barely remember the name of the one before. Thrones are distant. Bowls are close. You worship what feeds you, not what rules you. The sun drags its weight across the sky, and so do you. You check your hands and don't recognize them. They belong to someone older, someone who once believed they'd get out, but now they're just yours. Scarred, blistered, cracked, but reliable. At least when they're not trembling from cold or fever. You wipe your forehead with a sleeve that smells like ash and damp hay, and wonder not for the first time if reincarnation is real, and if so, who you ticked off in your last life. In the afternoon, your child brings you water in a clay jar that leaks from the bottom. He looks at you like you're still something holy. You smile like you believe it. He asks if tonight will be warm. You say yes, it won't, but the lie keeps him from crying. You drink the water slow, even though it tastes like the inside of a roof beam. You hand the jar back empty. He holds it like treasure. Then he runs off barefoot through the mud. And you hope, truly hope, he forgets everything about this place before he grows into your shoes. Evening arrives like a bruise, slow and purple and full of regret. You shuffle home with your body aching in the same places it did yesterday, and every day before that. The hut is dim, the fire already low. Mira hums a song under her breath as she stirs something thin into something edible. You sit beside her and say nothing. There's no need. She knows the weight you carry. She carries half of it. You used to want more than this. Now you just want to keep what little you have. Dinner is shared in silence, broken only by the sound of slurping and chewing, and the occasional cough that reminds you whose lungs won't last the season. You reach for the bowl last. Not because you're humble, but because your body moves slower than it used to. You eat what's left. And when you're done, you lick the inside clean, because nothing in this house gets wasted. Not food, not wood, not memory. And as the night closes its hands around your thatched roof, and the wind whispers old curses through the holes in the wall, you lie down beside a snoring child, a tired woman, and a fire that's more smoke than flame, and you whisper to no one in particular, please let it not rain tomorrow, because rain means mud. Mud means delay. Delay means less food. And less food is the fastest road to becoming a name no one bothers to carve on a stone. You dream of rice again, not white rice, which is fantasy, but yellowed grains clumped together, steaming in a bowl you don't have to share. Sometimes in the dream it's your birthday, sometimes it's just Tuesday. You always wake up before you taste it. That's the trick your mind plays, gives you the shape of comfort, but never the flavor. You lie still for a minute, letting the cold wrap around your ankles like it's counting your pulse. Then you rise quietly, like standing too loud might wake the bad luck that sleeps under your floor. Mira's already up. She hasn't slept through the night in years. Says her dreams are too noisy, full of dead family and boiling water. You don't ask what they say. Some stories are better left in the corners of your mind, right where the smoke stains curl on the walls. She hands you a bowl of warm water with 2 pickled beans at the bottom. The beans are supposed to bring good fortune. You've been eating them for years. The fortune has not arrived, but you keep eating. Out in the yard, your neighbor is cursing at a pig. The pig doesn't care. That's the secret to surviving out here. Be like the pig. Eat what you find, trust no one, and never apologize for sleeping in your own filth. You wave. He grunts. That's considered polite. You adjust the cloth around your waist, pat the empty pouch at your side like it might grow coins if you show it enough affection, and head back to the fields. Again, always again. You've done this so many times that your legs move without instruction, down the same rutted path, over the same rocks, past the same old shrine half swallowed by weeds. You nod to it, out of habit, not reverence. The god who lives there used to take chickens. Now you don't even have the chickens. You offer it a thought instead. A single word mouthed and forgotten. That's enough. For a god who hasn't spoken back in a decade. The field is still wet from last night's rain. That means the work will suck your feet in and refuse to let go. You've lost 2 pairs of shoes this way. One stolen by mud, one stolen by a cousin. You don't miss either. Shoes are temporary. Calluses are reliable. You wade in, thigh deep in work that doesn't care about your hunger, your stories, your small aches. The ground swallows complaint as easily as it swallows footprints. A crow watches you from a tree with a face like judgment. You throw a stone. It dodges easily. Mira says they carry souls. You say they carry fleas. Still, you nod to it before going back to your work, because you never know. And because even a bird deserves more attention than the tax collector who'll be here in 3 days. He'll want rice. You have millet. He won't care. That's the rhythm of things. You give what you don't have, and in return you get allowed to stay alive. By midday your arms are shaking, not from weakness, from repetition, the kind of exhaustion that doesn't scream. It hums, low and constant, like a second heartbeat in your bones. You wipe your brow with a cloth that used to be a sleeve and chew a piece of dried yam like it might turn into something better if you're patient enough. It doesn't, you chew anyway. Hunger is about performance as much as pain. The sky grumbles. Not with rain, just the threat of it. You don't look up. Skies change their minds too often to be trusted. You keep working, not because you're noble, but because stopping is expensive. You do the math in your head. Every minute resting costs a mouthful of something tomorrow. You don't have the margin for leisure. You work like someone's watching, even when no one is. Especially then. You think about your brother, the one who left to find fortune in the city, sent one letter, then nothing. You still check the road now and then, pretending you're not looking. Wonder if he eats better, sleeps better, lives better, probably does. He always had better luck with charm. You had better luck with weather. That's what you tell yourself. Makes the silence easier to carry. At dusk, you head home, legs sore, breath shallow, hands stained. Your son meets you on the path. Barefoot and grinning, he found a frog. Declares it a pet. You nod, trying not to think about how frogs vanish when the ground gets too dry. You tell him to wash up before dinner. He ignores you. Mira yells, and he obeys. The usual order of things. You take off your robe and beat the dust from it like it insulted your mother. Dinner is wild greens boiled until they surrender, rice thickened with yesterday's leftovers, and a single duck egg you all stare at before Mira splits it 5 ways. Your portion is the yolk. You eat it slow. Not out of gratitude, out of strategy. You want the taste to linger long enough to pretend you're full. Mira lights the lamp. You sit beside her. Ember lays on your foot. The room smells like soot and onions. This is what peace looks like when you've forgotten what comfort is. And as the dark settles in with the silence, as the wind pokes through the cracks to check if you're still breathing, you pull the blanket up to your chin and whisper one final request. To no one in particular, let the child stay healthy. Let the roof stay up. Let the night pass quietly. Because out here, wishes are just warnings said politely. And every day you wake up still inside your name is a kind of miracle. The rooster doesn't crow anymore. Something got it last week. Fox or spirit or hunger in a neighbor's hands. No one's asking. Mira just said, guess the sun will have to rise without him. And went back to stirring ashes in the stove like they might remember how to be fire. You wake up anyway. Your body knows the hour, even if the rooster's bones are scattered somewhere under a thorn bush. You stretch, slow and stiff, every joint reporting back like a soldier from the front. None of the news is good. Your clothes haven't dried. That's expected. Nothing dries this time of year unless you sit on it. So you throw on damp layers, feel them cling to your skin like regret, and step outside into a morning so quiet it feels like it's holding its breath. That's when you know today will be long. Not tragic, just the kind of day that forgets how to end, the kind that makes time stretch out like wet rope. Your neighbor waves you over. He has a dead goat and a problem. The goat died wrong, too sudden, too stiff, eyes too wide. Not sickness, maybe a curse. You nod like you know the difference. He asks if you want the hide. You say yes before he can change his mind. Meat is risky. Hide is useful. You drag it home, careful not to let the blood trail too far. Ember tries to chew the leg. Mira swats him with a broom made from shame and dry straw. The children gather around as you work. Stripping hide, scraping bone. They've seen this before. Still, they watch like it's theater. You let them. Better they learn from this than from famine. Tom asks if the goat had a name. You pause. Lie. Say no. The truth is, everything with a name is harder to eat. You stop naming animals after the pig called Willow. Mira still can't say that name without flinching. You finish before the sun reaches its highest point, hands sticky, back tight. The hide goes on the fence. You go to the stream. It's too shallow to wash properly, too muddy to be refreshing. You scrub anyway. Dirt is your second skin now, and you can't tell which part is you anymore. A woman passes with a basket full of nothing. You nod. She doesn't nod back. That's how it is here. Courtesy takes energy, and energy is something we lend to the crops, not each other. Back home, Mira has boiled roots in the pot and keeps stirring them like they might turn into duck. You add a pinch of pepper leaf and lie about how rich it'll taste. The lie is the seasoning. Ember curls up under the bench and grumbles. You toss him a scrap. He sniffs it and looks offended. You mutter that he's gotten picky. He sneezes like he agrees. Mira laughs once, short and sharp. That's her whole laugh. Now, small enough not to wake anything that might punish it. The taxman comes in the afternoon. Not the worst one, just the usual. Thin, dusty, smells like vinegar and authority. He asks about your yield. You lie a little, but not too much. He lies more. Says levies are lighter this year. Everyone knows that's false. But we pretend, because pretending is safer than telling the truth to someone holding your rice in his hand. He leaves with a sack of your best. Doesn't say thank you. He's not here for grace. He's here for grain. After he's gone, Mira sits with her hands folded. That's when you know she's angry. Not yelling, not crying, just folded. You sit beside her and don't touch. Just let the air between you hold all the words neither of you can afford to say. After a while, she goes to the stove, stirs the pot, and tells the children to wash their hands. That's her way of surviving. Forward. Always forward. You follow because backward only has ghosts in it. Evening brings another cough from the boy. Not the sharp kind. The wet kind. Mira checks his forehead. Doesn't say anything, but her jaw tightens. You look at your pouch. 2 coins. Not enough for herbs. Maybe enough for a prayer. But the priest is 3 villages away, and gods here prefer offerings they can chew. You sit with the boy. Tell him a story about the river that once ran sweet. He laughs. That's enough to convince you he'll wake up tomorrow. Dinner is silence broken by slurping and a brief fight over who gets the pepperroot chunk. Mara wins. No one argues. Afterward, you sit outside with the bowl in your lap, staring at the moon like it might blink. You whisper a few words you don't believe, just in case someone's listening. Ember rests his chin on your foot. You don't move. Movement would mean admitting the cold is finding its way in again. Later, when the fire has gone to embers and the hut creaks like it remembers winter, you lie down with one ear open to the dark. Mira breathes heavy beside you. The boy mumbles in his sleep. You wrap a hand around his ankle, not to keep him close, just to remember he's still warm. You close your eyes and count heartbeats. Yours, his, the fire's 3 steady things. And sometimes that's what survival is. Not comfort, not ease, just the counting of heat. And when the stars fade into gray, and another day drags itself out of the damp dirt, you rise again, not because you want to, but because there's no one else to carry your name through the field. And if you fall, someone else will have to plant where you left off. That's not legacy, that's duty. And duty here is the only thing harder than hunger. The morning begins with ash. Not fire, that's gone. Burned itself out sometime before the rooster that's no longer there would have crowed. You rake through the ashes anyway, hoping for a coal with enough life to save you the trouble of starting over. Mira hands you the tinderbox without looking. You know what she's thinking. So does she. But neither of you say it. Starting over is what people like you do, every day, every breath. Fire's no different. You step outside to stretch your back and feel the frost snap against your teeth. It's thin, but it's real. The kind of cold that doesn't kill you yet. It just makes you wish it would get on with it. You rub your hands together until they remember blood. Ember's already found the patch of sun near the fence. Dogs are smarter than men when it comes to survival. You envy him, tail and all. The boy is still coughing. Mira feeds him broth that tastes like boiled shadows. He doesn't complain. Children here learn early that silence is polite, especially when they're weak. You kneel beside him and tell him the story of the turtle who carried fire on his back. He asks if it's true. You say yes, not because it is, but because stories are stronger than medicine out here. Cheaper too. By mid-morning, you're fixing a fence with your cousin, who you don't like. You don't dislike him either. Feelings are for people with time. You hammer the same nail 6 times because the wood is old and rebellious. He talks about the neighbor who fell from a ladder last week and cracked his skull. Bad luck, he says. You nod. But both of you know it wasn't luck. It was exhaustion. But saying that out loud might invite it into your own bones. Lunch is a single steamed bun between 3 people. Mira slices it with such precision. It feels like a ritual. You take the middle piece, the smallest, not out of humility, just out of habit. Ember stares with the intensity of a monk. You give him the crust. Tom tries to steal it. Ember growls. Mira laughs. That laugh is worth more than the bun. You make a joke about opening a tea house. No one believes you, but everyone nods like it could be true. For a minute, the fantasy warms more than the food. In the afternoon, a peddler arrives. Cart full of wonders. Dried persimmon. Needles. A carved flute. Mira eyes a spool of thread. You eye a packet of ginger. The boy eyes everything. You trade a pair of sandals that no longer fit, and a promise to help load the cart for 1 piece of candied yam. It's gone before you've walked 10 steps. Tom says it was too sweet. You smack his head. He grins. You grin back. Sugar is rare. Smiles. Rarer. The peddler leaves a rumor behind a nearby village burned down. Bandits, maybe. Or spirits. Or debt. The explanation changes with each whisper. You listen carefully, not out of curiosity, out of calculation, distance, timing, direction. You don't fear fire or men. You fear what comes after. Refugees, starving mouths, desperation in unfamiliar eyes. That's what breaks a village. Not the flame, the flood that follows. Mira's stitching again, fixing a tear in your only decent tunic. The one you save for market days and funerals. She does it without asking, hands moving like they've mended 100 wounds and half as many garments. She hums something old. Her fingers smell like smoke and garlic. You watch her for a while and say nothing. You've said all there is to say, and none of it matters more than the fact that she's still here. Evening comes fast when the sky wants to forget you. It drops low and gray, like it's trying to tuck you in before you've earned the rest. You light the fire. Ember curls up. The boy sleeps hard. Mira washes the bowl with half a cup of water and a lot of forgiveness. You add a log to the flames and whisper a name you haven't spoken in years. Not for memory, for protection. Because sometimes a name is a shield, even a dead one. The wind starts to moan around the corners of the hut. The kind of wind that carries questions. You answer none of them. Just pull your coat tighter and listen for anything that doesn't belong. You've learned to trust the sounds that don't fit. Once, that sense saved you from a collapsing roof. Another time, from a collapsing man. You still see his face sometimes. Mostly in the fire, never in your dreams. Mira places a flat stone on the fire. Bread tomorrow. Flat, hard, full of grit. But warm, that's what matters. She says nothing, but you see the way her jaw moves. The way her eyes scan the ceiling like it owes her something. You don't interrupt, you just place a hand on her knee and leave it there. Not to comfort, to anchor. Sometimes a body just needs to be reminded where it still exists. And when night settles like dust over everything you haven't finished, and the shadows stretch without asking permission, you lie beside a dog who growls in his sleep, a woman who never cries in front of you, and a child who breathes easier than he did yesterday, and you think, Not for the first time. If this is what it means to live, then maybe I can keep doing it. One more day. One more bowl. One more nail in a wall that refuses to fall. You wake to the smell of damp wood and old sweat. Not unpleasant, just familiar. Like the scent of your own shadow. The coals didn't last the night, and neither did the warmth. Mira's already up, crouched by the stove, coaxing a flame from a pile of twigs that might as well be bones. You hear her breathing through her teeth, muttering to the sticks like they're stubborn children. You lie there a moment longer, cataloging your aches. Left shoulder, right knee, the spot behind your ribs where hunger likes to live. There's something about cold mornings that makes you forget your name. Not literally, just the shape of it, the part that feels like it belongs to a person with a future. You stretch, groaning like a beam about to snap, and sit up just in time for Ember to sneeze in your face. He blinks once, then licks your knee. You take that as good morning, better than most greetings you've had. The boy is already gone, off chasing frogs or debts or some combination of both. You hope he comes back with food. Mira hopes he doesn't come back with fleas. You both know he'll return with neither. And everything will still somehow go on. That's how it works. You keep expecting the day to break, and it never does. It just folds itself into a slightly different version of yesterday, tied together with mud and repetition. You spend the morning digging ditches. Not for crops, for drainage. Rain's been coming hard and the paths are turning into traps. You and 3 other men, each with a shovel older than your regrets, moving earth that doesn't want to move. The youngest slips and curses. The oldest doesn't say a word, just spits, keeps going. You fall somewhere in the middle, both in years and hope. Not quite young enough to believe in luck. Not quite old enough to stop trying. Someone jokes that you should charge the village for your work. Someone else reminds him that payment here comes in the form of not being forgotten. You laugh along, but the truth stings. You once had bigger plans. Everyone here did. Even the old woman who talks to the well dreamed of silk and servants. Now she dreams of dry feet. And you just dream of days that don't end with the taste of copper behind your teeth. At lunch, Mira's waiting with radish soup and a square of dried tofu so thin it might float away if you exhale too hard. It tastes like what you expect. Bland, hot, necessary. You eat with both hands around the bowl. It's not manners, it's survival. You ask Mira what she'd do if she had coin. She says, "Buy more bowls." You laugh. She doesn't. She's not joking. Last winter, the baby cracked one trying to break ice from the bucket. That bowl is still glued together on the shelf, leaking slightly but loyal. You spend the early afternoon fixing the roof. Again, the thatch slips in wind like a drunk at market. You patch it with straw, twine, a bit of cloth from your old sleeve. You hum as you work, something your mother used to sing before her breath turned shallow. Mira calls up from below, tells you you're off key. You tell her the roof doesn't care. She says, "Maybe not, but I have ears." You smile without meaning to. Then the smile turns into a sigh. The boy returns with a bruise on his cheek and a dead snake in his pocket. Says he found both by the stream. Mira checks the bruise, nods, says, "He'll live." You toss the snake on a flat rock near the stove. It's small, stringy, and probably more parasite than meat, but it hisses in your memory like a feast. You'll boil it down later. Call it medicine. That's the trick. Never admit what you eat is desperation. Give it a name. Say it helps your blood. A traveling monk arrives near sunset. No shoes, no hair, no smile. Just a bell tied to his sash and eyes like hollow stones. He offers blessings in exchange for rice. You give him half a bowl and ask for strength. He taps your forehead and mutters something in a tongue you don't know. Mira watches from the doorway, arms crossed, eyes suspicious. Later she asks what he said. You shrug. "Either I'm cursed or cured," she says. Same thing, really. You sit by the fire that night, belly warm, hands tired. Ember snores beside you. The boy hums a tune you don't recognize. Mira is mending a sock so worn it looks like a spider web with dreams. You tell her to toss it. She tells you to hush. Everything's got a little more use left, she says. You know she's not talking about the sock. You nod, stoke the fire, say nothing. The roof holds through the wind, and the boy doesn't cough, and no one knocks on the door with news of taxes or death. That's a win. That's better than most days. You lie down with your hand on your chest and whisper, not to any god, just to the room. I can do this again. You don't say it loud. Don't want to tempt the frost that listens through the cracks. But you mean it. And as the last flame curls into itself, and the world tilts softly towards sleep, you close your eyes with your knees drawn up and your hopes laid out like a game of stones on the floor, and think, if I can carry one more day, then maybe tomorrow can carry me back. The morning brings a red sky, which means trouble, though no one agrees on the kind. Could be wind, could be rain, could be spirits moving too fast through the hills. You step outside and taste the air like a man testing soup. Heavy, wet, tired. You squint at the horizon as if it might blink first. Mira comes up behind you and says, whatever it is, it's not waiting for permission. She's right. Trouble never knocks out here. It just walks in and sits at your table. Today is a temple day, not by calendar, but by desperation. The cough's gotten worse, and Mira's eye has started twitching when she thinks no one's looking. The boy sleeps more than he should, so you make the decision. The long walk to the mountain shrine. Not for miracle, for momentum. You know it won't fix anything, but sometimes carrying your worries somewhere else makes it lighter for a little while. You take a pouch of rice, a coin with a hole through it, and a bundle of dried mugwort. The monk last week said spirits like mugwort. You don't believe him. You don't disbelieve him either. You just go. The path to the shrine is steep, carved into stone by feet that gave up long before yours. You count each step out loud, not to mark progress, but to keep your legs from forgetting how to climb. The numbers start to slur around 60. By 90, you're bargaining with your knees. The shrine is small, half-rotted, overgrown, occupied by a chicken and 3 ghosts. You greet the chicken, light incense, and sit cross-legged before a statue, so weathered it might be a man or a mountain. You place your offerings neatly, not reverently, just with care. Care is a form of faith, too. You close your eyes, lower your head, and whisper everything you're afraid to say in your own home. You don't ask for more. You ask for enough. Enough breath, enough broth, enough silence to sleep without flinching. It starts to rain halfway down the path. Not politely. The kind of rain that forgets your name, your dignity, your spine. You slip twice, curse once, and laugh once. Not because it's funny, but because your mouth needed something to do. By the time you get home, you're soaked, shivering, and one sandal lighter. Mira hands you a towel like she expected. This outcome. You dry off beside the stove, muttering about weather and gods, and stares. No one listens. Ember sneezes in agreement. The boy's fever broke while you were gone. Mira says it, with the voice of someone who doesn't believe in luck, but still thanks. It just in case. You kneel beside him and press your hand to his cheek. Warm, not boiling. You exhale like you'd been holding your breath for 4 days. He opens one eye and mumbles something about porridge. You promise it's coming. It isn't, but it will be. You'll make it be. Dinner is wild greens again. Mira found a few roots near the path. You crush some mugwort into the broth for taste and symbolism. You eat slow. Not because it's hot, because it's quiet. No one coughing, no one arguing, just chewing and breathing. And the sound of the ladle scraping the bottom of the pot. When the pot is empty, you touch your fingers to the rim and murmur, "Thank you." It's unclear if you mean the meal, the moment, or the fact that your hands still work. After dinner, you sit by the fire, and tell Tom a story about a giant who carried a village on his back. Mira scoffs. That's nonsense. You shrug. So is half the world. Tom asks how the giant slept. You say, he didn't. He couldn't afford to. The boy nods like that makes perfect sense. You look at Mira. She looks at you. No one says it, but you're both thinking the same thing. We're all carrying something too big to put down. Someone knocks at the door. Late. Unusual. You tense. And so does Mira. Ember doesn't bark. He just stands. That's worse. You open the door with one hand on the shovel. It's the widow from the southern field. Her daughter's sick. She heard the boy got better. She's out of food and hope. Mira's already gathering broth. You grab a rag and the last clove of garlic. No one says the word help. No one needs to. Out here, you give what you can before the need grows teeth. The fire burns low again. You sit beside it long after everyone's gone to bed. Mira's snores are soft. Embers curled against the door. You stare into the coals and imagine their stars. You think about how every flame, no matter how small, started from something terrified of dying. You whisper a line from an old song, half remembered, probably wrong, doesn't matter. It's not for them. It's for the part of you that still hopes your voice means something. You lie down on the mat with your knees to your chest, one arm draped across your ribs like armor. The rain taps on the roof like fingers counting down. You press your eyes shut and think of the chicken at the shrine. You hope it's dry. You hope the ghosts leave it alone. You hope for once, hope is enough. And as the dark folds over you, like an old blanket, and your body sinks into a rest you didn't earn but desperately needed, you let out one long breath into the quiet and think, this was a hard day, and I am still here. That's worth something. The sun crawls in sideways like it's ashamed to show its face. You open your eyes before it touches you, already halfway to sitting because your body wakes itself now. The aches no longer surprise you. They're more like old acquaintances you share a bed with. Uninvited, persistent, familiar. You swing your legs over the edge of the mat and pause. Not because you're tired, because you're alive. And some mornings that feels worth marking. Mira's by the stove again. She's been waking before you lately. You pretend not to notice. She likes to win, even if the prize is just starting the fire without help. You grunt a greeting. She grunts back. That's affection in your language. She's crushing dried greens into a pot with leftover rice water and something that might be mushroom. You don't ask. She doesn't lie. This is how meals are made now, quietly, with whatever the earth didn't manage to hide. You hear Tom outside talking to the chickens you don't have. His imagination's loud. Mira says it's a sign of a soft head. You think it's a sign of a surviving one. The boy needs things that aren't here. Sometimes that's how people live, by pretending their world is bigger than it is. You once did the same. Only difference is you did it with maps and ambition. He does it with pretend poultry. Honestly, his version seems healthier. You have a splinter in your foot. Been there for 3 days. You limp on it now, which is almost the same as healing. Mira offers to dig it out with the point of her sewing needle. You decline with great ceremony and exaggerated fear. She rolls her eyes, but you catch her smiling. Small victories. If you can still joke about pain, it hasn't won yet. You put on your sandals, ignoring the tear in the side, and step into the morning like a man who doesn't owe it anything. Today is laundry day, which means hauling water, beating cloth against stones, and pretending you don't see the bloodstains that won't come out. You, Mira, 2 neighbors, and the widow from the southern field. No one talks about the illnesses. No one talks about the fevers. You just wash, wring, fold. The widow hums a tune none of you recognize, and no one asks her to stop. She hums like someone clinging to a memory she doesn't dare speak aloud. Ember finds a rat and brings it to the yard like a trophy. You trade it for a leftover rice ball and pretend it's a fair trade. He devours it, then looks at you like he's done you a favor. You wonder sometimes what life would be like as a dog. No taxes, no shame, just hunger, warmth, and loyalty. Then again, he doesn't get soup. So, maybe not. You repair the hoe this afternoon. Again, the handle split near the grip. You bind it with rope and 3 prayers. Mira says tools break like people do, usually at the part they use the most. You tell her that makes your spine the next thing to go. She doesn't laugh, but she hands you a strip of cloth to bind your waist. That's her answer. You wear it like armor, not because it protects you, but because she offered. There's a wedding 2 huts down. You're not invited. No one is, but you hear the flute anyway. Off key, desperate, joyful. Someone shouts, someone laughs. A pot breaks. That's how you know it's real. You sit outside and listen with your eyes closed. Not out of jealousy, just curiosity. You remember what love sounded like before it got tired. Mira brings you a cup of tea that tastes like burnt bark. You clink your cup to hers and call it a toast. You find a hole in the roof just before sundown. Probably rats. Could be spirits. You patch it anyway. Mira tells you to light incense tomorrow. You promise you will. You won't. You're not disrespecting the gods. You're just busy. If they want gratitude, they can fix their own ceiling. You mutter that last part under your breath, just in case. Dinner is thin soup and steamed leaves. You tell Tom it's a special recipe from the mountains. He asks, which mountain? You say the one that's not hungry. He nods solemnly and eats like he's been invited to an emperor's table. Mira pretends not to be impressed. But she adds a pinch of salt and calls it Highland stew from then on. Names matter, even when they're lies. You sharpen your knife by the fire slowly, rhythmically, like it's the only thing in the world that listens. Mira hums again. The boy draws shapes in the dirt. Ember dreams about something that makes his legs twitch. You look at them, all of them, and feel something too soft to name. Not joy, not peace, just a small warmth that doesn't come from the fire. A kind of presence, like you exist on purpose. And as the night settles down and the cold leans against the door like an old friend who always overstays his welcome, you pull your blanket up, stretch your tired feet toward the coals and think, this life is not kind, but sometimes it lets me keep what matters. And for now, that's enough. The wind woke you before the light did, not because it was loud, it wasn't, but because it felt intentional, like it had a reason for being here. You lay still and let it creep through the cracks in the wall, brush across your chest like a hand made of cold dust. Mira was already gone. You heard the quiet splash of water from outside, the sharp exhale she makes when her knees hit the edge of the basin. She doesn't complain anymore. Not out loud. Not even to herself. That's how you know it hurts. You sit up and rub your neck and your fingers come away dry and cracked. You'll need oil. You won't get any. The boy is snoring softly beside the dog, both of them tangled in a pile of blankets that smell like smoke and last season. You think about letting them sleep longer, but sleep is a tax paid in lost time, and you're already behind. You whistle low. Ember perks up. The boy groans. The day begins the same way it always does, with resistance and surrender. The well is frozen, not solid, but enough to make drawing water a ceremony. You chip at it with the handle of a broken ladle, then lower the bucket like it's a prayer. The rope creaks. The pulley squeals. You speak to neither. You don't have to. They've heard you curse enough times to know your cadence. When the bucket comes up, it's only half full. You nod. Could be worse. Could be empty. Breakfast is a handful of dried rice. Mira soaked overnight. Soft enough to chew. Hard enough to remember. The boy chews slowly. Eyes fixed on something far away. Probably another story he's writing in his head. You envy him that. The ability to look at a bowl of nothing and taste adventure. You used to do that with Sky. Now you just eat. Mira hands you a sliver of preserved vegetable. You break it in half and give her the bigger piece. She doesn't say thank you, she just eats it. That's love here. Not words, proportions. Work today is hauling clay. Someone's trying to build a new kiln and bribed the village men with talk of fired pots and fewer cracked bowls. You know better, but you go. Because lifting heavy things is cheaper than refusing. The clay is wet and eager to stick. Your back immediately regrets the decision. You and 5 others haul load after load from the riverbank, grunting like oxen sweating in a wind that doesn't care how much effort you're wasting. You remember a story your father once told about a man who carried bricks every day for 30 years and then, one day, built a house without realizing it. You wonder if the house ever kept the rain out. You wonder if the man was buried in the bricks he carried. You wonder why the story never had an ending. Maybe because most stories don't. They just stop when people stop telling them. Lunch is a bite of millet cake so dry. It sounds like sand when you chew. You drink from a shared jug. Mira packed a bit of scallion for you. You eat it last. Like a reward. The others sit in a circle, talking about the weather like it's politics. You listen, not because the forecast matters, but because hearing someone else pretend we have control over the future is comforting. You nod at the right times. That's enough to be included. In the afternoon, someone starts singing. Not well. Not even on purpose. Just half a line of something his mother used to sing while weaving. It floats out over the clay, the dust, the dull thuds of tired hands. It doesn't last. Nothing does. But for a moment the work feels like something else. Not sacred. Exactly. Just human. You carry the next load with a little less complaint. Mira would call that magic. You'd call it rhythm. You get home to find the boy scraped his knee, and Mira's scolding him with vinegar and string. You crouch beside him, wipe the dirt away, and tell him it'll leave a scar. He asks if that's bad. You say, no. It means something remembered you. He seems to like that. You tie the cloth gently and towels his hair. He grimaces like he's too old for it. He's not. Not yet. Dinner is better than expected. Mira found garlic shoots in the field and added them to a pan of rice crusts. The smell is sharp and impossible to ignore. Tom claps when he sees the pot. You all eat with the kind of hunger that makes jokes unnecessary. There's no talking, just chewing, slurping. A few sighs. When the bowl is scraped clean, Mira leans back and says, "That tasted like spring." You smile. She's right. Just a hint of something not cold. Later, you mend your sandal in silence, while Mira sharpens the knife and the boy curls up under a blanket, with Ember tucked behind his knees. The fire is steady, the roof doesn't leak, no one is coughing. You think about the mountain shrine, about the cracked statue. You wonder if anyone ever prays for you or if you're just the one doing the carrying. You don't resent it. Not exactly, but it would be nice to know. And as the night settles its weight across your shoulders and your hands go still and the fire sighs into its last shape, you whisper toward the darkness, not for help, not for hope, but for witness. Just so something somewhere knows. Today was hard, and I stayed anyway. Your dreams are getting quieter, not sweeter, just softer. No more running, no more falling, just flashes now. A bowl being passed. A face you might have seen once in the market. The sound of Mira humming through her teeth, while she kneads flour that doesn't exist. You wake slowly, eyes crusted, breath stale, joints humming. The boy is still asleep, limbs flung wide like he owns the floor. Ember is curled around his feet, snoring like a saw dragged through wet wood. You watch them for a second longer than usual, just to make sure the rhythm's still there. You get up and stretch, the kind that pulls at every thread inside you and asks, politely, if today is worth it. You answer with motion, always with motion. Mira hands you a piece of flatbread as you pass. It's yesterday's, maybe the day before. Still warm though. You nod in thanks. She says, "Don't eat it too fast." You bite it in half. chew, swallow. It tastes like ash and effort. You say, too late. She smirks. That's your morning blessing. The boy needs new shoes. You all know it. He's growing, and the soles of his current ones flap like they're trying to escape him. But new shoes cost more than silence. So for now, he patches them with rope and smiles like it's an adventure. You don't correct him. Don't tell him what it means to keep fixing the same thing over and over. He'll learn. Or maybe, if you do this right, he won't have to. The village elder sends word. Someone's roof has collapsed. They need bodies, not opinions. You go, along with half the village. The hut belonged to a man who never spoke unless the harvest was good, which means he didn't speak often. Now he sits on a stump with a blanket around his shoulders, while the rest of you lift beams, dig out broken jars, and find space in your backs for someone else's disaster. That's the rule here. When the roof falls, we all hold the sky up. You find a doll buried in the wreckage, hand-sewn, faded, one eye missing. You brush it off and set it gently on a ledge that didn't break. Someone's child will cry less if it's there, or maybe more. Sometimes objects make pain louder. Mira finds 3 good clay tiles and pockets them. Waste nothing, she mutters. You nod. Waste nothing. Not wood, not warmth, not memory. After the mess is cleared, the elder thanks you with a nod and half a radish. You eat it whole, dirt and all. It's not payment, it's a gesture. A reminder that there are no strangers when the roof is gone. You feel the radish slide down your throat like a pebble. Your stomach growls and your back aches. And still you walk home proud. That's the strange thing about this life. The pride sneaks in through exhaustion. Back at the hut, the boy shows you his drawing. It's of a house, your house, but better. 2 stories. A door that doesn't lean. A window with something growing in it. He says, someday. You nod, like you believe it. You don't. But he does, and that belief might be enough to carry the roof another winter. You ruffle his hair and ask if the dog has a room too. He laughs and says, no, he sleeps in the fire. Mira mutters he already does. Ember sneezes dramatically. You take the knife and go to the woods. Not for hunting, for bark. Certain trees give better kindling, and you've learned which ones sing when they burn. You strip just enough. Never more. Trees don't forget. The wind rustles above you. Not quite words, but familiar enough. You nod to it. Say nothing. Say everything. You return with a bundle across your shoulder and mud on your knees. Mira sees you and doesn't comment on either. Dinner is leftover rice, mashed with sweet potato and a sauce Mira swears is made from bean paste and hope. It tastes better than it should. The boy eats like he's racing death. You eat like someone who knows death. Isn't that fast? Ember licks the bowl when no one's looking. Mira lets him. You all pretend not to see. There's a strange mercy in pretending. A shared silence that says, we know, we just don't want to ruin it. After dinner, Tom shows up with news of a festival in the next village. They have drums, he says, and dumplings. You raise an eyebrow. Mira folds her arms. Tom shrugs. We could go. You all know you won't. But for a few minutes, you talk like you might. You picture the lanterns, the laughter, the way your feet might move if they weren't always so tired. You let the dream float for a bit before blowing it out like a candle. That night, Mira unrolls an extra mat, just in case the wind gets worse. She mutters something about the roof holding, and you place a bowl beneath the newest leak. You lie down with one arm over your face and listen to the drip, 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 like a lullaby composed by inconvenience. The boy shifts in his sleep. Ember grumbles. Mira exhales slowly. The room settles around you like a second skin. And as your body sinks into the ache of another finished day, and the fire tucks itself in, without asking permission, you think the roof held, the pot was full, and no one knocked with bad news. And for now, in this place, that's what passes for grace. The rain came harder last night than it has all season. You heard it in your dreams before you heard it on the roof. A kind of drumming that didn't wait for rhythm, just kept beating until you woke up already tired. The leak grew teeth. The bowl beneath it filled and then overfilled. Mira kicked you in the ankle halfway through the night to move the mat, and neither of you said anything. What's the point in cursing the rain? It never apologizes. When the light finally cracked the edge of the wall, you sat up slowly, like the morning owed you an explanation. Your back felt like wood that had been left out too long. The boy had pulled Ember into the blankets, and both of them looked far too peaceful for the kind of world this is. Mira was wringing out a shirt with the kind of precision that says she's already been awake an hour. You nodded at her. She didn't nod back. That's fair. You step outside into the thick of it. The path is mud. The air is soup. You can hear someone yelling about a pig 2 houses down. You can't tell if the pig ran off or dropped dead. Either way, it's gone. Your feet sink into the earth, like it's trying to eat you. That's what land does here. It feeds you in the dry months and swallows you in the wet. You mutter something rude at the sky and instantly regret it. The sky has a long memory. You haul water again, this time with both hands on the rope to stop the pulley from screaming. The bucket slips once, sloshes over your boots, and now you're wet in places that make you reconsider your life choices. Mira says, "Take the smaller pot next time." You say, "I like a challenge." She says, "Then try making breakfast." You both smirk, because sarcasm is cheaper than wood and burns just as warm. The roof down at Old Wen's place collapsed. Again, you're called over to help. Again. This time you bring your own rope. You know better now. Every time a storm hits, the village turns into a map of failures you patch up one nail at a time. Old Wen keeps muttering about spirits. You keep muttering about poor construction. You both hammer in silence, dripping wet, swearing under your breath in 2 different dialects. At midday, Mira sends you a bowl of rice gruel wrapped in cloth. It's still warm when you unwrap it. Not hot, not flavorful, but warm. And in this moment, that counts for something sacred. You sit under what's left of Old Wen's overhang, spooning it in slow like it might vanish if you move too fast. Tom walks by and says, "That looks like heaven." You tell him, "No, heaven would have scallions." He nods solemnly and moves on. Back home, Mira's already drying the clothes again. She's hung them under the ledge, balancing bamboo poles like a woman playing a very boring game. The boy has taken to splashing in the puddles, his laughter just loud enough to echo off the neighbor's wall. Mira doesn't stop him. You don't either. You're both waiting for the cough to come back. It hasn't yet. You knock twice on the doorframe, just in case. The road's washed out, and the messenger hasn't come. No news today. No tax notices. No imperial decrees. No rumors from the city. It feels almost like freedom, like the world forgot about you for a day. You sit on the stool near the doorway, knife in hand, peeling nothing in particular, just running the blade against an old piece of wood. Mira says you look like you're sharpening a thought. You tell her it's not ready yet. Dinner is eggplant and wild onion, both salvaged from the edge of a field you're technically not supposed to pick from. Mira cooked them with a bit of vinegar and something she won't name. You suspect it's the last of the preserved ginger. You eat it slow, savoring every bite, even as your tongue stings a little. The boy calls it the spicy dinner. You call it the miracle. Mira calls it all we've got. Everyone's right. You patch the wall after dinner. The rain's still falling, softer now but steady. You plug the hole with cloth and hope. Ember curls at your feet. The boy draws pictures in the ash by the fire. Mira hums a song with no tune. You don't speak. There's nothing to say. Just this moment. And the small fact that everything is still standing. You lie down with your hands behind your head and your eyes fixed on the one part of the ceiling that doesn't leak. You don't pray. Not really. Just whisper a sentence into the dark. Something like a truce. Something like "keep me here one more day." Mira shifts beside you. The boy mumbles in his sleep. Ember huffs once and goes still. And as the rain tickles the edge of your roof and the fire dies with dignity, you breathe in the scent of wet earth and old smoke and think, this isn't the life I wanted, but it's the one I know how to carry. And you fall asleep before the doubt can answer back. The rain finally stopped, but it didn't leave quietly. It took half the road with it, a portion of the hillside behind the temple, and what was left of the fence that never really worked anyway. You step out into the morning with your shoulders hunched like the sky's still watching. The mud is everywhere, thick, rich, and smug. You can already feel it tug at your boots like it wants them more than you do. You sigh and get to work, because there's nothing else to do. Mira's already gathering stones for the path, muttering about broken things as if they're people she's known too long. The boy is still asleep, limbs flung out like a starfish that lost its way. You leave him be. Sleep is the only time he doesn't ask questions you can't answer. Ember limps a little this morning, probably from chasing rats under a wet wall. You check his paw, wipe off the mud, and whisper, that's what you get for trying to be useful. You spend the morning hauling branches from the tree line, ones knocked down by the storm. Some are dry enough to burn, most aren't. But you can't afford to be picky. Mira sets them by the fire to bake the damp out of them, one stick at a time. The hut smells like smoke and wet bark, and someone trying very hard not to fall apart. The smell of effort. You've gotten used to it. Tom shows up with news. The tax collector's cart tipped in the mud yesterday, 2 miles outside the village. No injuries, just a broken axle and some bruised egos. You nod solemnly and pretend not to be delighted. Mira smiles without showing teeth. Tom laughs and says, we get 1 week more. You all know better, of course. Delay isn't mercy. It's just an extra day to worry with. There's a knock at the door around midday. Rare these days. It's the widow again, this time with a small bundle of herbs and a request. Her daughter's fever is back. Mira takes the bundle, sniffs it, and nods. She doesn't promise anything. She never does. You walk them part of the way home, not for safety, just for silence. Sometimes people need to know someone is nearby without being told what to feel. The widow doesn't cry. She just walks like someone trying not to fall apart in front of witnesses. You get back and find the boy trying to fix the leak above the hearth with a spoon. It's a terrible plan, but you let him do it for a few minutes anyway. Mira eventually shoos him off, replaces the spoon with cloth and ash paste, and mutters something about men and their useless cleverness. You pretend to take offense. She pretends to mean it. The boy sits beside the fire and carves a stick with a dull knife. You realize he's humming that same wordless tune. Mira sometimes sings. You don't say anything. Just let it echo. Dinner is thin porridge with pickled greens and 1 whole egg, cracked into the middle like it wandered in by accident. Mira split it into 3 bowls with surgical precision. The yolk floated in yours. You tried not to smile like a fool, but Mira caught you anyway and raised 1 eyebrow like she'd just handed you a kingdom. You whispered. It's too much, she said. So is life. Eat it before it changes its mind. You step outside after the meal, just to stretch, and find the air full of frogs. Their voices rise from every puddle like a choir that never rehearses. Ember wades through the mud, like he owns it, barking at the loudest ones, then running back to you like he expects applause. You lean against the doorframe and watch the mist slink over the hills. It doesn't feel threatening tonight, just tired, like everything else. The boy brings you a drawing he made on old rice paper. It's your hut, only rounder, cleaner, with smoke rising from the chimney in a perfectly behaved swirl. You ask what the circle on top is. He says, that's where the rain goes in. You laugh harder than you mean to. Mira shakes her head but doesn't hide her smile. You pat the boy's head and tell him he's hired as the architect when you rebuild the world. Later you sit by the fire with a piece of bark in your hand, carving nothing in particular. Mira threads a patch onto your sleeve. The boy is asleep again, ember curled around his legs like armor that snores. You ask Mira what she'd do if you ever had enough money. She says, buy time. You say, that's expensive. She shrugs. So is dying slow. Then she yawns and ties off the last stitch. The roof creaks. The fire pops. The night breathes in and out like it forgot how to be still. You lie down and close your eyes, one arm across your chest, one leg crooked to ease the ache in your hip. Mira settles beside you, not touching, just close enough. You hear the boy whisper something in his sleep. You don't catch the words. Doesn't matter. You caught the tone. Hope dressed as nonsense. And as the dark rolls in with its usual demands, and the frogs sing like they've never lost anything, you whisper to yourself, we're all still here. And somehow, despite the mud, despite the wind, despite the quiet unraveling of everything you thought would hold, that's enough. You wake to warmth. Not fire, sunlight. Honest, rare, bone-deep sunlight slicing through the cracks in the wall like it's trying to apologize for all the days it hid. You don't move at first. Just lie there and let it soak into the side of your face. Eyes half open, one arm curled beneath your ribs. Mira's breathing is slow and even, embers twitching in his sleep, probably chasing chickens that don't exist. You almost don't want to get up. That's how you know you have to. You stretch slowly, like peeling yourself out of yesterday, and rise into a room that for once doesn't smell like wet cloth and leftover firewood. Mira stirs. You hand her the tin cup and nod toward the door. She nods back. That's your version of morning conversation. The boy is already outside, barefoot, crouched in the sunlight like a sprout trying to make a case for his existence. He waves. You wave back. You wonder when he started waking up before you. Outside, everything is brighter than it should be. The ground's still soft, but it's no longer hungry. The puddles have shrunk. The chickens down the path sound confused. Even the flies buzz like they're unsure if they're allowed. You take a long breath and hold it, just to see if the air tastes different. It does. Slightly less of mildew, slightly more of green. You want to bottle it and save it for next time. The clouds come back angry. Mira sets out laundry, like it's a performance. One cloth at a time, stretched tight, pinned sharp. Her fingers move fast, deliberate, like each flick is defying something. You offer to help. She says no, but lets you stand there and hand her pins. The boy chases a frog through a dry patch of mud, slips, lands hard and pops back up laughing, like a prince immune to bruises. Mira winces, mutters something about knees, and you both pretend he'll be fine. He always is, until he isn't. You fix the door today. It's been leaning since the last windstorm and you've been ignoring it like it owes you rent. But now the sun's out, and you have no excuses left. You lift it off its rotting hinge, clean the edge with a knife so dull it's mostly memory, and jam a splinter of wood into the frame to make it sit straight again. Mira watches from the side and says, "It won't last." You say, "Neither will we." That seems to satisfy her. Lunch is a rarity boiled egg, with wild mustard, and a drizzle of soy from the jar you keep buried behind the stove. Mira rations it like it's treasure, which, in fairness, it is. The boy claps when he sees it. You let him have the yolk. Mira rolls her eyes and eats the white. You take the last bite and savor it like you're being paid to remember how good things can still be. For a minute, the table doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like place. After the meal, you sit outside and work on your sandals. Again, the straps are splitting, the sole's gone thin, but your hands are steady and the string is strong. Ember lies beside you, panting lazily, tail thumping every few minutes like he's remembering you're still here. The boy offers to help, hands you a stick of old glue and says, "Make it stronger than before." You nod. You wish that worked for people too. You visit the neighbor who lost his pig. Turns out it wandered into the river and drowned trying to drink. He's not angry, just quiet. You sit beside him and offer a few words that don't matter. He shrugs, says he'll borrow a goat. You nod. That's how it goes here. One loss at a time, patched over with something smaller. He gives you a head of cabbage on your way out. You thank him like it's gold. He waves like it weighs too much to keep. The boy starts building a bird trap in the afternoon. Not because he needs to, just because he wants to see if it'll work. You let him. Mira keeps an eye on him from the doorway while she grinds pepper leaf into powder. Waste of time, she says. But she says it soft. You know she's lying. Watching him chase sparrows is the first time she's smiled in days. You say, hope is a hobby, she snorts. So is disappointment. Dinner is cabbage stew with too much salt and just enough silence. You eat slow. Mira tells a story about a fox that tricked a scholar into marrying a ghost. The boy interrupts with a better ending. You let him have it. Mira nods like she meant for him to finish it all along. Ember licks the pot clean when no one's looking. Again, you say nothing. Again. Later, you carry water from the well in 2 balanced buckets and don't spill a drop. That shouldn't feel like victory. But it does. Mira lights the lamp early. The flame burns steady for once. You mend the mat. The boy hums. The roof doesn't creak. No one knocks. The dog doesn't bark. Peace, here, is measured in what doesn't happen. And as the night comes in quietly, not to steal but to rest, you lie back on your mat, hands folded behind your head, and think, maybe tomorrow will break again, but not tonight. Tonight the sky stayed where it belonged. The door closed properly. The soup had flavor, and for now you are fed, warm, tired, and not afraid. And in this life, that's everything. You hear the rooster today, not yours. You don't have one, but one close enough to imagine you do. It crows like it means it, like it's daring the sun to show up. You sit up slowly, rub your neck, stretch your back until it pops like wet bamboo, and wonder when exactly it became normal to measure time by the noises other people's animals make. Mira is already folding laundry from the day before. The cloth smells like smoke, and yesterday's wind. You nod. She nods back. That's the whole conversation. The boys curled up under the dog again. Ember barely fits anymore, but neither of them care. The boy kicks in his sleep. Ember snores like a storm trapped in a teapot. You let them be. There are worse things in this life than dreaming about running. Mira hands you a bowl of water and a half bun so dry you could use it to patch a roof. You thank her anyway. That's how gratitude works out here. You don't say it because it's deserved. You say it because it keeps the day from feeling heavier than it needs to be. You pass old Yoon on the way to the field. He's digging a ditch in front of his hut. Again, says the rain keeps trying to sneak in under his door. You offer him half a cabbage leaf. He says thanks like it's a blessing. You both stand there chewing and watching the clouds roll over the hills, neither of you saying out loud that they look a little too dark for this early in the day. You both know that's enough. The field is quieter than usual. No birds, no frogs, just the sound of tools against earth, like everyone's trying to beat back something that hasn't arrived yet. You plant sweet potato, the kind with the red skin that Mira says tastes like old song lyrics. Your hands move on their own now. Press, turn, bury, over and over. You don't remember learning how to do this. You just woke up one day, and your body already knew, like breathing or knowing when to duck. At midday, Mira brings you tea in a pot wrapped in cloth. She doesn't say anything, just sets it down and walks off. The tea tastes like boiled bark and loyalty. You sit on a low stone wall and sip it while watching the road for travelers that never come. The boy's drawn a face on a gourd and stuck it on a stick near the path. It looks a little like you. You hope that's not intentional. You find a nest under a plank by the well. 3 eggs, still warm. You leave them. Mira asks why. You say, because we've taken enough today. She doesn't answer, but later she leaves out a pinch of grain on the step, like an apology to whatever bird might still be watching. That's how balance works here. Not with rules, but with gestures. Small things done without being asked. To no one who will thank you. The boy skins his knee falling over a bucket. Again. You clean it with water and bind it with a cloth that used to be part of Mira's sleeve. He asks if it'll scar. You say probably. He asks if that's bad. You say no. It just means you lasted longer than whatever tried to hurt you. He nods solemnly like he's just been knighted. Mira watches from the side, pretending she's not listening. She's not great at pretending. Dinner is rice and radish. Again, Mira found a mushroom and cut it into such thin slices you thought it was paper at first. The boy called it fancy. Mira called it just enough. You all ate like it was the first meal in a week, even though it was the third today. That's what small hunger does. It tricks you into gratitude for things that would have made you cry 3 winters ago. Afterward, Tom stops by with a bit of gossip and a worse haircut. Says the headman is planning to marry off his daughter to someone from the next province. Mira makes a face. You make a noise. The boy asks what marriage is. You say, it's when 2 people agree to share chores. Mira rolls her eyes so hard they almost fall out. Ember farts loudly. That ends the conversation. The rain starts just as the lamps are being lit. Not a downpour, just enough to make the edges of everything uncertain. You check the patch on the roof again, still holding. Still holding. Mira moves the bowls closer to the wall just in case. The boy hums himself to sleep with a tune that might be real or something he made up. Ember snores beside him, tail twitching like he's chasing ghosts. He owes money. You sit beside the fire and sharpen your knife. Not because it needs it, because it gives your hands something to do. Mira stitches the side of your coat. You don't ask why, you just nod once. She doesn't smile, she doesn't need to. The room is warm, the silence is friendly. The walls haven't buckled, no one is coughing. That's wealth in this language. And as you lie down and the world settles into something that feels almost kind, you close your eyes and think, there will be more storms. But not tonight. Tonight. The roof holds, the bowl is clean, the boy is whole, and someone remembered to feed the ghosts outside. And for now, that's more than enough. The wind changed sometime before dawn. You felt it in your ribs before you heard it in the trees. Colder, sharper, full of intention. It's not a storm wind, not yet. Just the kind that shows up early to remind you how fragile your plans are. You rise slowly, joints stiff. Breath fogging in the sliver of light. Mira's already lit the stove, rubbing her hands together like she's trying to convince them to behave. You sit beside her without a word. She hands you tea. It tastes like sleep. Someone forgot to finish. The boy's blanket slipped halfway off in the night. You pull it back over him and tuck it under his chin. He doesn't wake, just sighs in that small, honest way children do when the world is still kind in their dreams. Ember stirs but doesn't move. His tail thumps once. That's his way of saying good morning. You nod to him. The ritual is complete. The wind carries dust today, not rain. Dust that gets in your teeth and whispers about faraway places you'll never see. You walk to the field with your scarf tied over your mouth, like a bandit in a story you're too tired to tell. Tom walks beside you, asking if you believe the emperor really has a robe made of gold. You say, if he does, I hope it keeps him warm. Tom laughs. You don't. The earth is harder today. Dry, unyielding. You dig anyway, because the ground doesn't care how you feel. It only understands persistence. Mira joins you later, basket in hand, steps silent but sure. You work side by side in the kind of silence that only happens between people who've argued too many times to bother doing it again. When she hands you a drink, you take it like a truth you forgot you asked for. A traveling storyteller passes through near noon, old man missing teeth, carrying a drum that looks more bone than wood. He gathers a few people by the well and spins a tale about a prince who turned into a carp to escape a war. The boy listens with wide eyes, chewing the same bite of rice for 10 whole minutes. Mira watches too, arms crossed, pretending not to enjoy it. You lean against the wall, half listening, half grateful. Even lies can warm a crowd. After he leaves, the boy asks if you were ever a prince. You say, "Only in bad dreams." Mira snorts. Ember barks at a leaf like it insulted his mother. You head back to the field with mud in your boots and a story in your chest that you'll never repeat. Not because it's sacred, just because it's too thin to survive another telling. Lunch is pickled greens and a ball of millet with a cracked walnut pressed into the side like a crown. The boy offers you half. You decline. He insists. Mira tells him not to be wasteful. You take it with a nod, not because you want it, because letting people give to you is a kind of generosity too. You chew slow, tasting salt and effort. The afternoon is spent weaving mats. Your fingers ache by the third one. Mira's already on her fifth. She doesn't gloat, just hums that old tune again. The one that sounds like it used to have words but forgot them out of spite. The boy makes a mat of his own. It's crooked, unraveling at the edges. He offers it to Ember, who promptly lies on it like it was made by the emperor himself. Mira laughs. That sound, that exact one. You'd trade 2 winters for it. Later, someone finds a dead fish in the ditch. Too small to eat, too big to ignore. The elder says it's a sign. You ask of what? He says, "Depends on whether you're hungry." Mira says it means the spirits are bored. You nod like you understand. The boy wants to bury it. You help him dig a hole, place it gently inside, cover it with a leaf. He says a few words. You don't correct him when he calls it a dragon. Dinner is quiet. Just broth and a few slices of dried mushroom. Mira adds pepper. The boy slurps like it's a feast. You chew the broth with your eyes closed and imagine it has chicken in it. Ember licks the bottom of the pot when you're done. Mira pretends to scold him. The boy yawns mid-bite and drops his spoon. You carry him to the mat and cover him with the patched blanket. He murmurs something about the fish. You nod and say, "It's watching over us now." That night, the wind rises again. More confident this time, Mira checks the windows twice. Adds another log to the fire. You sit beside her, both of you watching the flames like they're telling a story neither of you can afford to interrupt. Ember growls once in his sleep. The wind growls back. Mira says, "We'll hold." You say, "Until we don't." She doesn't argue. And as the fire settles into itself, and the wind sighs through the roof like it's looking for cracks in your courage, you lie back, one hand on your chest, and whisper into the dark. Let the walls hold. Let the quiet last. Let the morning come easy. You don't expect an answer, but sometimes the asking is the only thing that keeps you breathing. The morning arrives like a thief, quiet, gray, and already inside before you notice. You wake to the sound of wind poking the walls, soft at first, then sharper, like it's trying to find weak spots in the wood. Mira's sitting by the stove, eyes half closed, rubbing warmth into her wrists with short, practiced motions. You join her without speaking. The tea is already steeped. The boy's still snoring, bundled like a dumpling left too long in the steam. Ember stretches, sneezes, and goes back to pretending he guards something important. You don't talk much while the water boils. The sound of the pot rattling is enough to fill the silence. Outside, something knocks loose. Probably a tile, maybe part of the awning, maybe a bird giving up. You tell Mira you'll check it later. She grunts in a way that means no, you won't. You drink your tea and tell yourself it tastes good. It doesn't, but it's hot. That's enough. There's still no word from the next village. No travelers, no messengers, no gossip worth trading. The last thing you heard was that someone over there got married and someone else died, but no one's sure which names belong to which event. Life out here folds people into the dirt so quietly it's hard to tell the difference. Mira says we should go next week if the road clears. You say we'll see, which means no. She knows that. You head out to mend the fence by the southern edge. Tom helps for a while before pretending he's needed somewhere else. You let him go. The wind bites through your coat, finds the hole in your sleeve, and settles there like it's paying rent. You work anyway, hammering the loose boards, tying fresh twine, kicking the base until it stops leaning like an old man about to confess something. When it finally holds, you stare at it like a dog that finally sat when told. On your way back, you find a ribbon caught in a bush. Red, frayed, probably dropped during the last market. You pocket it. Mira might want it for mending, or the boy might tie it around Ember's neck and call him noble. Either way, it's better in your hand than on the wind. You've learned to pick things up without asking why. Out here, usefulness comes disguised as debris more often than not. Lunch is thin. Not bad, just honest. Rice porridge again, this time with slivers of taro so small they might have fallen in by accident. Mira adds salt. The boy adds vinegar. You add silence. Everyone eats like they're racing the cold. Ember doesn't beg today. He just lies under the bench and watches your feet like he knows the leftovers won't come. You save him the last spoonful anyway. It's not mercy, it's routine. After lunch, the sky darkens in that slow, creeping way that makes you feel like you've done something wrong. You chop wood in the yard, stacking it with care. Mira watches from the doorway, arms crossed. She doesn't offer to help. That's her way of saying you're doing it wrong but not badly enough to be worth stopping. When you drop a piece on your toe and swear, she finally smirks. You pretend it doesn't hurt. It does. The boy makes a game out of catching falling leaves. Says each one is a wish. You catch one too by accident. He tells you to make it count. You close your eyes and whisper something into the leaf, then toss it back into the wind. Mira asks what you wished for. You say, shoes that don't leak. She raises an eyebrow. Liar. You shrug. She's right. You wished for time. Or maybe peace. Or maybe just for the wind to leave you alone. That night, you find the red ribbon again. You almost forgot about it. You hand it to Mira without explanation. She ties it around the water jar, then sits beside the fire without a word. The boy asks if it's magic. Mira says, only if you leave it alone. That's how things become sacred here, by being small, quiet, and not looked at too closely. Dinner is leftovers stirred into something new. Mira calls it stew. The boy calls it the brown stuff. You call it enough. You eat slowly, letting the warmth stick to your ribs. Ember gets a scrap and pretends it's the best thing he's ever tasted. He's lying, but politely. The boy starts nodding off mid-chew. Mira lifts his bowl before he drops it. You take that as a sign the day is done. You lie down early. The wind's back, louder now, but somehow less personal, like it's angry at something else tonight. You close your eyes and let Mira's breathing mark the minutes. The boy mumbles something in his sleep about a red dragon and soup. Ember kicks once and sighs. You listen to the fire dying slowly and think. The roof held, no one bled, and tomorrow hasn't found us yet. You smile into the dark, and sleep finds you first. The fire's out when you wake, not low out. You can see your breath, rising in the pale light, curling upward like it's trying to flee. Mira's still bundled beneath the blanket, her back turned, shoulders hunched, like the night added weight while she slept. You rub your hands together until the blood returns, then shuffle over to the ashes with the kind of reverence usually reserved for the dead. You poke through them, whispering the same curse you always do when the last coal gives up on you. You light the new fire slowly, carefully. The tinder's damp. The kindling snaps reluctantly. The smoke curls sideways and makes your eyes water, and for a moment you think you smell your father's coat, dust, sweat, and pine resin. It's just memory, stirred up by the cold. You wipe your nose on your sleeve and say nothing. Ember pads over and rests his head on your foot, like a furnace with fur and bad breath. You let him stay. Warmth is warmth. By the time the pot boils, the boy's up, and scratching at the side of his head like it owes him something. Mira finally stirs and blinks in that way. She does when her dreams end in arguments. She doesn't speak. You hand her a cup of hot water and she drinks it like it might turn her back into someone less tired. The boy wants sweet rice. You tell him there's no such thing. He grins anyway. You envy that kind of optimism. You used to call it ignorance. Now you call it resilience you haven't earned yet. The wind's calmed, but it left a mess. You spend the morning picking bits of reed and straw out of the yard, rebuilding the stack that collapsed in the night. Mira repairs the water pail with a bit of wire and determination. The boy sweeps or tries to, while Ember supervises by rolling in the cleanest spot. None of you say it, but today feels different. Not good, just possible. Like maybe the world isn't actively trying to swallow you whole, just nibble at the edges. You walk to the upper field to help old Yoon with the irrigation ditch. He's already ankle-deep in mud, cursing gently. You work side by side in the kind of silence that makes words feel like intruders. He finally says, "Used to think this ditch would outlive me." You nod. It still might. He chuckles without looking at you. Depends who patches it next. That's the most conversation you've had in days. It stays with you longer than it should. Lunch is mashed yam and pickled stem. Mira eats in tiny bites as if stretching it into a performance. The boy inhales his food and then embers despite Mira's scolding. You chew slowly, listening to the creak of the roof and the far-off echo of someone yelling about chickens. For once, it's not your problem. You sip broth from the edge of the bowl and wonder how something so plain can taste like relief. That afternoon, the boy finds a coin in the dirt. Not new, not valuable, just a copper with a square hole, green with time. He says it's lucky. Mira says it's filthy. You wash it and give it back to him. He strings it around his neck with twine and declares himself emperor of the courtyard. You bow deeply. Mira snorts. Ember licks his own foot. You've seen worse monarchs. You fix the ladder after that. 2 rungs missing, 1 cracked. You replace them with wood scavenged from the shed, half a broken stool, and something that used to be part of a fence. The result looks like it was built by someone working with one hand and no plans. Still, it holds your weight. That's what matters. You don't ask for perfection anymore. You ask for barely enough. And when you get it, you say thank you like it's a feast. Mira unpacks the fabric she's been hiding. Old curtain, faded red, stiff in the corners. She cuts it into strips to mend the boy's jacket. He watches with the kind of attention usually reserved for fire or thunder. She lets him thread the needle once. He stabs his thumb and swears. Mira raises an eyebrow. You pretend not to laugh. The fabric ends up crooked. Mira doesn't fix it. The boy beams like he invented clothing. Dinner is sweet potato congee. It smells better than it tastes. But that's not the point. Mira serves it with quiet ceremony, dividing the bowl like it holds inheritance. The boy says it's the best thing he's ever eaten. Ember looks skeptical but hopeful. You eat until the bowl is clean and warm your hands on the sides before passing it back. Mira says nothing, but her eyes linger on you longer than usual. That's her version of "I'm glad you're still here." After dinner, you step outside and look up. The stars are back. Not all of them, just enough to remind you they exist. You remember your mother once said that every star is someone who refused to be forgotten. You believed her. Then you didn't. Now, standing barefoot in the dirt with a full belly and half a roof over your head, you believe her again. And as the night wraps itself gently around your shoulders and the fire settles into quiet breathing, you lie down beside a boy who calls himself emperor, a woman who mends without asking for thanks, and a dog who guards dreams like bones. And you whisper to the dark, "This was a small day, and I needed it." The day starts with laughter, not yours and not Mira's, but the boy's, loud, sudden, real. You open your eyes to see him outside, arms raised, shouting something about a dragonfly the size of a cup. Ember is barking at it like it owes him rent. You sit up slowly, rubbing the sleep from your shoulders, and for a strange moment, You don't feel the usual weight pressing down. You let the laughter wash over you, unfamiliar but welcome, like a guest that shows up without asking and doesn't make a mess. Mira's at the stove, stirring something that smells vaguely of ginger and definitely of effort. She glances at you but says nothing. That's how you know she's in a good mood. You pour water into the wash basin and splash your face until your skin stings. Cold water always feels personal, like the world reminding you who's really in charge. You towel off with a square of cloth that used to be part of a flag from a festival no one remembers. Nothing here ever stays what it was. Breakfast is rice again. Thin, plain, honest. Mira adds a pinch of salt and nothing else. The boy wants to tell a story with his mouth full. You tell him to chew first. He obeys only because Ember's watching with judgment in his eyes. Mira mutters something about animals having better manners than people. You agree. Ember farts in protest. The boy laughs again. That sound. The one that isn't survival or need or warning, it stays with you as you head out for the day's work. There's talk of bandits upriver. Nothing confirmed. Just whispers passed from trader to ox cart to neighbor. Mira tells you not to worry unless the whispers start arriving with names. You nod, but check the door latch 3 times before leaving. That's how fear works here. Not loud, not fast, just slow and steady, like water carving a rock. You grab your tools, sling your bag over your shoulder, and try to focus on the dirt instead of what might come crawling out of the trees. You help dig a trench to redirect runoff from the last rain. The earth here is stubborn, dry at the surface, and angry underneath. You and Tom trade tools halfway through, not because it helps, just because sometimes a different handle makes the pain feel newer. You talk about the sky, about fish that don't exist, about a neighbor who once tried to grow oranges and now sells vinegar. None of it matters. All of it matters. That's how men speak when their hands are too busy to lie. Mira brings lunch herself. That's rare. She doesn't say why, just hands you the cloth bundle, waits while you eat, then sits beside you in the shade. You offer her the last bite. She takes it without comment. The boy is at home, drawing war horses on the back of an old scroll. Ember's supposed to be guarding him, which probably means they're both asleep. You think about asking Mira how long she plans to stay. You don't. She stays until you stop needing her there. Then she leaves. In the afternoon, you gather reeds by the river. They'll dry in a day or two, be turned into mats, baskets, maybe a roof patch. You watch a bird land on the water like it owns the whole valley. You wonder what it would feel like to leave, not run, just go. Mira once said leaving only works if there's something waiting on the other side. You're not sure that's true, but you're also not sure you'd survive finding out. On the way home, you find a stone shaped like a crescent moon. You almost leave it, then pocket it without knowing why. When you show it to the boy, he declares it lucky and puts it on the windowsill, so the ghosts don't get bored. Mira makes a sound like she disagrees but doesn't move it. That's how you know she's already decided it belongs there. You forget about it almost immediately, but later that night you catch her glancing at it just once when she thinks no one's watching. Dinner is a surprise. Tofu with garlic. Just enough to make your mouth believe something good happened. The boy says it tastes like money. Mira says that's the garlic lying to his tongue. You don't say anything. You just eat, and let the warmth hit the hollow behind your ribs where anxiety usually sleeps. Ember gets a chunk and immediately buries it under his mat like he's saving it for worse times. You don't blame him. The wind picks up again. Not hard, just sharp. Mira closes the window early. The boy asks if tonight will be cold. You say no. Mira says probably. You both know better, but lies told for comfort are a kind of love out here. She adds another layer to the mat, and the boy curls up like he trusts you both with his whole spine. Ember curls tighter, twitching like he's chasing rabbits through a dream that ends in warmth. You sharpen your blade again, not out of need, just to hear the scrape of metal on stone. Mira stitches a hole in the side of your coat. you didn't know was there. You don't thank her. She doesn't expect it. The fire snaps once, then settles. The night comes in around the edges, slow and careful. You lie down with your hand across your chest, like a promise. And as the world narrows to this small room, this thin roof, this patchwork life, you think today had laughter, food, and nothing terrible. You exhale into the dark and whisper, please let tomorrow be just as small. And for the first time in weeks, you believe it might be. The rooster doesn't crow this morning, but the sun shows up anyway, dim and reluctant, like someone dragged it out of bed against its will. You open your eyes to the smell of damp fabric and something faintly floral. Mira must have boiled mint in the water again. Not for healing, just for difference. Sometimes even a hint of something not gray is enough to make you sit up straighter. You pull on your coat. Ember lifts his head, sniffs once, and promptly decides the morning isn't worth standing for. The boy is awake before you. He's sweeping the floor with too much enthusiasm and not enough technique. Dust swirls more than it leaves. Mira watches from the corner, pretending to mend a sleeve while quietly judging every sweep. You step outside, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and notice someone's hung paper charms near the path. Red and gold, fluttering in the breeze. Probably a leftover from the last market or an early offering to something superstitious. You don't touch them. Some things aren't yours to dismiss. Breakfast is better than it has any right to be. Steamed yam and flatbread, just crisp enough to pretend it was made with intention. Mira plates it like it's a banquet, setting 3 bowls down with the same care she gives to mending your coat. You eat in silence, broken only by the boy's slurping and Ember's occasional sigh of moral superiority. Mira finally speaks. We'll clean the ditch today. You groan. The ditch is long. She shrugs. So is life. You spend the next hour knee-deep in sludge, scooping debris that somehow smells older than the village itself. The boy tries to help and nearly drops a frog down his shirt. Ember barks once, then walks away like he wants no part in this foolishness. Mira works steadily, sleeves rolled, jaw set. You pause once, look at her stained hands, and wonder if she was ever young in a way that didn't require grit. You don't ask. She wouldn't answer. Old Yoon passes by with his mule, offers you a nod and a warning about foxes near the western trees. One of them's clever, he says. Knows how to open gates. You nod like this matters to you, even though you have nothing worth stealing and no gate to speak of. Still, later, you find yourself placing a rock in front of the shed door, just in case the clever ones are listening. Lunch is sour cabbage and millet cakes. Dry, crumbly, filling in the way sadness sometimes is. The boy complains and Mira glares him into silence. You add a splash of vinegar to yours, pretend it's soup. Ember doesn't get anything this time, and protests by laying down dramatically beside the pot. Mira ignores him. You don't. You pass him a crust when she's not looking. He eats it like betrayal tastes amazing. The afternoon is for mending the net. One Mira traded for a basket of eggs and half a song. It's fraying at the edges, full of holes big enough to let your hope swim through. You sit on a stool and thread each knot slowly, squinting as the sun lowers just enough to get in your eyes. The boy hums while sorting stones, pretending they're soldiers. Mira occasionally looks over your shoulder and clicks her tongue. It means not bad, but don't think I'm impressed. Later, the priest passes by, offering blessings in exchange for nothing at all. He's barefoot and smiling, hands tucked into his sleeves like secrets. Mira gives him water. The boy gives him a drawing of the moon. You give him silence. He seems satisfied. Just before he leaves, he says, "Spring will come late this year, but it will come." You nod. Not because you believe him, but because sometimes agreeing with hope is easier than disagreeing with fact. Dinner is simple again, vegetable broth, and rice with sesame Mira ground by hand in the morning. She says nothing about the effort. You say nothing about the taste. But when the boy says, "This is the best day," you and Mira both look up, startled. He's not wrong. Nothing bad happened. The roof held. The food stretched. The ditch got cleared. Sometimes survival looks like nothing breaking. Sometimes that's more than enough. After dark, the wind picks up again, but it's gentler now, like it's tired too. You and Mira sit by the fire while the boy draws foxes on the back of an old prayer slip. Ember sleeps belly up, completely unbothered. You sharpen a fishhook you haven't used in weeks. Mira braids a bit of cord, not for anything, just to keep her hands from remembering all the work they've done. And when the fire dims to an orange pulse and the house creaks like it's exhaling for the first time today, you lie back with your arms crossed, eyes half shut, and think the world was quiet today, and I didn't waste it. And in this life, this cold, aching, muddy, breath-held kind of life, that quiet is gold. You wake to the smell of something roasting. Not meat, nothing that decadent, just grain toasted over a low flame, mixed with dried greens and salt. Mira's experimenting again. You stay still a moment longer, listening. No wind, no rain, no coughing. Ember is curled up at the door like a guard who actually takes his job seriously. The boy is humming a melody you're pretty sure is just the wind from 3 days ago turned into a song. You smile without meaning to. Then you sit up, bones popping like firewood, and start the day. Mira hands you a bowl before you even ask. The food is warm, chewy, surprisingly good. She doesn't explain it. You don't ask. The boy takes his portion outside and shares half with Ember, who doesn't question generosity. You take a sip of hot water, let it burn the back of your throat, and feel for one brief moment something close to ready. Ready for what? You're not sure. But the feeling doesn't run, so you follow it. The task today is gathering branches from the old orchard beyond the ridge, trees too stubborn to die, too tired to fruit. Their wood burns clean if you cut it right. You and Tom go together, each carrying a sack, a blade, and half a plan. The path is dry today. You talk about everything except what you're really worried about: crop prices, bandits, taxes, spring. Instead, you argue about whether the river is shrinking or if your memory's just gotten bigger. At the orchard, the trees are brittle and beautiful, dead things that haven't given up the shape of life. You run your fingers along one of the trunks, feel the grain like lines in a palm. Tom says his grandfather was buried here. You ask if he liked fruit. Tom shrugs. He liked being left alone. You both nod like that's wisdom. Then you get to work, breaking off what will burn, stacking it like you're building a home from what no longer grows. Back in the village, Mira has set up a drying rack for herbs. She doesn't say where she got them. You don't ask. The boy has found a beetle the size of his thumb and declared it a general in his dirt army. Ember keeps a respectful distance. You unload the branches, wipe your forehead, and lean against the shed like it's going to explain something. Mira hands you a cloth to wipe your hands, says nothing, but her eyes linger, just long enough. Lunch is hot again, 2 days in a row. This time it's turnip greens and a sweet mash she refuses to name. The boy calls it the cloud stuff. You eat slowly, savoring the flavor even if you can't name it. Mira chews with her eyes closed. That's how you know it's a good meal. When even Mira stops thinking, Ember gets a scrap. He looks at her like she's finally achieved sainthood. She calls him a fool. You agree, just not out loud. After lunch, you patch the storage box where the rats chewed through last season. The boy watches, then tries his hand at hammering a nail. It goes in sideways. He looks up, unsure if that's allowed. You pat his shoulder. If it holds, it counts. Mira hears you and smirks. That explains your roof. You throw a pebble at her. She throws a smile back. It lands heavier than you expected. Someone comes asking for rope. You give them yours without complaint. They'll return it, or they won't. That's the deal here. What's borrowed belongs to need, not ownership. Mira eyes the empty hook where it used to hang and says, "You'll need that." You say, "So did he." That's enough of an answer for now. The boy falls asleep early, curled on the mat with Ember half on top of him. You and Mira sit by the fire, knees close, hands still. She's sewing. You're not. You think about asking her to teach you, then decide it's better to just watch. Her hands move like she's negotiating with the thread, not commanding it. You wonder if that's how she sees life, something you work with, not against. Dinner is quiet, not sad, peaceful. Everyone chews slowly. The oil lamp casts shadows that look like a different family, taller, cleaner, less tired. You try not to stare too long. When you catch Mira watching you, you nod once. She doesn't nod back, just keeps eating. That's how she says I see you too. Later you check the roof again. No leaks. You check the latch on the door. Still there. You check the boy's breathing. Steady. Then, at last, you lie down. Arms crossed over your chest. Eyes tracing the ceiling like it holds stars. You whisper into the quiet. Today was good and I am still here to remember it. And for once the silence answers back with nothing but warmth. You wake before the light, but not before the warmth. The fire's still alive, barely, but enough to take the edge off the air. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the dog sprawled across your ankle, or the boy's hair tangled in your sleeve. Mira is awake, of course. She always is. She's stirring something over the coals, wearing that look she gets when her thoughts are louder than the room. You nod once. She doesn't notice. That's fine. Not every greeting needs to land to be real. The boy mutters in his sleep. Something about ladders and fish. You smile just a little, and untangle yourself without waking him. Ember opens one eye and gives a soft grunt, like he's taking attendance. You toss a small log onto the fire, not because it's needed, but because it feels like something hopeful to do. Mira looks over and finally says, I'm using the last of the bean paste. You say, that's brave. She says, that's necessary. You both sip your tea like it means something bigger than it does. Outside, the frost has finally surrendered. The earth is soft again. You step into it barefoot for a moment, just to remember what it feels like to touch the world instead of stand on top of it. Cold mud, soft weeds, a beetle crawling over your toe like you're part of the scenery. Mira watches you from the doorway and says nothing. She doesn't have to. That moment is yours. You go back inside without explaining. You never explain the good things. They're too easy to spoil. The boy wakes with bed hair and ambition, declares he's going to build a trap for dreams so he can keep the good ones and let the bad ones fly away. Mira hands him a spoon and tells him to finish breakfast first. He eats like it's a job. Ember stares at him like he's royalty. You sip broth and think, let him build it. Let him trap all the things I couldn't. Mira adds a pinch of salt to your bowl. That's how she says, me too. After breakfast, the neighbors stop by one. A broken pot, a stuck gate, a question about seeds. You answer what you can, promise what you can't, and fix the pot with wire and old glue. The gate stays stuck. The seed advice is probably wrong. Still, everyone leaves smiling. That's the miracle of community. It forgives your ignorance as long as you show up. You sit on the step and let the sun rest on your shoulders like you've earned it. Mira finds the boy's drawing from yesterday. 3 stick figures standing under a crooked sun with Ember in the middle, larger than all of them. She pins it to the wall. You glance at it every time you pass, even when you pretend you're not. It's not good. But it's true. There's a difference. He doesn't need praise. He just needs proof that someone saw it. Mira gives him that proof in silence. It's worth more than gold. You work on the roof again. Not because it's broken, just because you know it will be. That's the rhythm of life here. Repair before ruin, feed before hunger, love before loss. Mira hands you the hammer. The boy hands you a nail. Ember keeps guard by looking bored. You finish the patch just as a breeze picks up. You look at the sky. It looks back like it's finally in the mood to behave. You take that as a handshake. Lunch is plain, warm, Enough. You don't talk much. Not because anything's wrong. Just because the silence feels earned today. The boy chews thoughtfully as if tasting more than food. Mira leans back against the wall, eyes closed. You study the way the light falls across the floor, golden and patient. It's just light, but it feels like a reward. Maybe not for anything big, just for staying. The afternoon passes without drama. No fires, no cries, just the sound of small lives doing what they're meant to do. Mira boils laundry, the boy ties knots into string. You sharpen tools you barely use. Ember naps like it's a full-time job. You watch the shadows grow longer and realize with a kind of quiet awe that you haven't thought about leaving in 3 whole days. Dinner is bean paste and greens over old rice, made better with heat and a little lie from Mira, who calls it market style. The boy believes her. You pretend to. Ember gets the scrapings. Mira lights a lamp even though the moon is full. You ask why. She shrugs. Habit. You nod. That's enough of an answer for almost anything. When it's dark, really dark, and the fire's low again, you lie back beside them. This woman who doesn't flinch, this boy who dreams loudly, this dog who doesn't ask for anything but space, and you think, if the emperor knew how rich I am, he'd have me taxed into dust. Then you laugh, softly, and say nothing at all. And as sleep folds itself around your body, and the walls hum with the breath of everything still standing, you whisper a last thought to no one in particular. Maybe I wouldn't last a day in your world either. And in the stillness that follows, you feel heard.